What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, a blind film critic. And today, it's a somber day. It's the season finale of The Last of Us. Spoilers, by the way, just in case you did. Spoiler warning. Inherently, every recap is a spoiler. Most of the reason why people read recaps are for spoilers and for hot takes. So I got them. I've also been recapping the whole season, so if you want to see if my thoughts have been consistent, I like The Last of Us. I think my season 1 recaps are still up too. I think. So I think you can actually see me recap the whole damn series. But yeah, we're here. I don't know why we're 2 episodes shy of episode count from last season, but fuck it. I mean, things don't really matter anymore. Just what is life in this? First of all, I want to thank and shout out the team. What is it? Point 360, Roy Samuelson. I always forget the writer's name. This is the first show that ever got a quality check person, Serena Gilbert, credited in the audio description credits, which is amazing. So, because there's a lot that always happens here. There's a sort of like a distinct lack of zombies, though. Like towards the end, we're getting a little bit into the Walking Dead territory. I talk a lot about Walking Dead. It's the show that makes the most sense to compare The Last of Us to. So there were people who kind of left The Walking Dead because it became less about zombies and more about humans and zombies are just kind of like side pieces. Like early on, it's very much about surviving a zombie apocalypse. And then it becomes sort of about surviving the humans that are in the zombie apocalypse. And zombies just kind of occasionally are thrown in there. And maybe somebody will die from them. Maybe. Randomly. Every once in a while. But yeah, it's for The Last of Us, which actually sort of has not just walkers, but all of these other kind of different types. I was kind of also, I play a lot of, before I lost my vision, I played a lot of video games. And I have not played The Last of Us. I don't own a PlayStation. I was an Xbox person. And I'm familiar with the game. I've listened, plenty of people have talked about it, and I feel like I've played the video game by now because so many people have just broken it down for me. And so every time I see that Feel Her Love, and I see these the weird cult people, I always think about, like, is that like another zombie? And I don't need that question to answer for me because it reminds me a lot of what I was gonna say is Left 4 Dead and the witch that you would run into. And I'm like, man, that would be terrifying. Like Left 4 Dead, I'm surprised like we haven't made that into a film or television series because some of those zombies were crazy, and seeing them sort of materialize into a film or television series would be great, especially the witch. Like, especially having something that runs at you and claws your face off would be nuts. I always hate pissing off one of those things in that game. So here we open up with Ellie. She's come back to the theater, and she doesn't really want to talk about it. She doesn't actually really go into detail either. There's very little detail. Also, Dina's getting the arrow removed from her foot, so she has to recuperate. Jesse picks up pretty quickly when Dina refuses alcohol and notices that, some of her word choices and everything, which he'll later bring up to Ellie about Dina being pregnant. And so he's like, well, she said I have to survive. And he's like, well, now I have to survive. Anyway, so we're bound and determined to follow the video game whether anybody likes it or not. We're just bound and fucking determined. What is the point? What is the point of picking a new medium if you're not going to make changes? What is the point of doing that? Of embracing, they do an episode like that couple from the first season, and they get all this praise, right? Because that they told a story that wasn't there in the video game, and they expanded characters and they did something different, and everybody was like, Emmys, give them Emmys. And here they keep doing, they're like, yeah, I don't know that anybody liked this in the video. We're going to keep doing it though. So, anyway, yeah. Ellie and Jesse have to head out because they have to go find Tommy. Dina has to recuperate, so she's hiding out in the theater, barricading with the door. So Ellie and Jesse end up going out. Ellie is clearly shook by everything that's happened recently, and still very much I'm here to kick ass and stuff. So lots of choices that we make in this episode that feel like I was playing a video game, and like I had to make choices and I had no other choice but to make that choice, even though I would never make that choice. You ever feel like that in a video game where you're like, is there another option? Oh no, I have to get in this boat? Why the fuck would I get in this boat? Like, why on earth would I get in this boat? Oh god, so at some point there's a sniper on the roof, which totally feels like in a video game I could hear that's exactly what would happen, and Jesse and Ellie would have that exact conversation, and then Jesse would split to go find Tommy off camera, you know what I'm saying, like off screen, and then we'd find out what happened later on. Feels very video gamey. There was also a scene where Jesse and Ellie are running, and there are some wolves that catch one of the Seraphites and beat him and whatever, and Ellie wants to stop it. And, you know, I feel like it would have been one of those no good deed goes unpunished things, because the Seraphites are batshit crazy. At this point, I'm siding with the wolves, because the Seraphites aren't even open to conversation. At this point, they have lost all reason. So, Jesse stops her from trying to take on 6 wolves. And then they split up, and Ellie ends up heading off because she realizes that the whale that she got Nora to mention in the last episode before beating the shit out of Nora. Those 2 episodes ago, sorry, last episode was actually a flashback. It was 2 episodes ago. The whale is like this aquarium. It's a reference to an aquarium. So, she heads off for that, and Jesse heads off to save Tommy, who's clearly on a roof sniping at wolves. So she goes off on her own journey and to find Abby. She's bound and determined to find Abby. But what she sees instead is she sees Owen and the other one. What was her name? I can't remember. And they are part of this group that are going on to, they get on a boat, they're putting supplies on a boat. We see Jeffrey Wright. Also, Jeffrey Wright is in this a little bit more. I'd be still surprised if he got an Emmy nomination for the amount of screen time he's had and the very little he's really had to do. But he talks a lot about how he needs Abby. They don't know where she is. But this fight that they're about to have, that, you know, it's very possible that he may die and Abby needs to carry on the cause. So there's a little bit of that, but they're loading up this boat and they're headed off to an island, which is probably Seraphites, right? They're going to have a war with the Seraphites. And so Ellie decides in her infinite wisdom to jump into a tiny little boat and go after them, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever on any level. It's the kind of decision where I'm like, she sees like a full army. At this point, it's a suicide. She's on a suicide mission at this point, because there are far too many people for her to have to fight off singularly by herself. And she must think that she has the greatest sneaking capabilities. But of course, it's in the middle of a storm. So her tiny ass boat capsizes, And then she drifts ashore after having almost drowned, and a little Seraphite finds her. And immediately she gets found by other Seraphites, and she starts to get strung up. And even though she's trying to like negotiate, the Seraphites don't speak, I guess, or talk or have conversation. You know, there was this whole big ceremony for the last person they gutted. This woman seems to be mute. They do everything through sign language now. So Ellie can't communicate at all or tell them, or and this is again, I mean, Ellie has so much information. She just saw them coming to the island. She knows what's probably going to happen. She could warn them and say, I came here to stop the wolves. They're about to attack you. Like, literally, she does none of that. But luckily, the wolves attack anyway. So there's some sound coming from the main camp. So the Seraphites literally just drop Ellie and run back to their camp to help the rest of the Seraphites. So they're like, leave her. Really? That was easy. So I guess that everything's very ritualistic, and if they can't complete the ritual, then I guess she lives to see another day. Lucky her. So she heads off to the aquarium finally, and sneaks in. Very complicated. Like, she jumps on top of things. The audio description on this was like, she doesn't just like walk in through the front door. You know, she has to figure out a way how to sneak in and climb in. And eventually she gets in. Now, remember, she's gone on this journey. She went on a boat, survived Seraphites, climbed over shit, jumped in, got into the aquarium. And she wanders around, and eventually she hears Owen and the other one, Mel? Is that her name? Talking. And they're debating back and forth and about, you know, whatever it is that they need to do for Abby and what they don't want to do or whatever. And Ellie doesn't really wait for very long. She kind of listens and gets a conversation. When she hears that they know where Abby is, or thinks that they know where Abby is, she kind of just steps out and demands that they tell her where Abby is. She's got a gun, and she's like, show me on the map. I won't hurt you. I'm not like you. You know, those kind of things. I just need to know where Abby is. And again, these people are, even though at least one of them, and the sad thing is, sort of how this goes down is, I think the one that would have probably told her because she wasn't having it anymore also ends up getting. So basically Owen ends up pulling his gun, which is stupid because Ellie's already pointing hers. So fucking quick draw McGraw over here. Of course she shoots him, but the bullet ends up nicking Mel in just the wrong place in her neck, like her jugular. So she's like bleeding out. And so she's barely shot. But in a day where we don't have doctors and medicine, nobody can stop it. And so she's trying to, this is where Ellie sees that she's pregnant, and Mel is trying to tell her how to deliver the baby, how to do a C-section and save her baby. And Ellie just doesn't do it, which doesn't make any sense. And also Mel's barely dead when, out of fucking, I swear to God, these people, they find shit. These are all Hufflepuffs. Everyone in this thing is like the world's greatest Hufflepuff. Fucking Jesse and Tommy come into this room. Like, they know exactly. Ellie went on this complicated ass journey to get to where she is, where she drowned, got attacked by Seraphites, hopped over like things and climbed in not a normal entrance. And Jesse and Tommy just wander in, and they're like, in like the same period of time, right? And like, Ellie's barely been there for any amount of time. So in the same period of time it took Ellie to do her thing, Jesse got Tommy, went back the other direction, and almost fully caught up to Ellie. You know, I'm not one of these people who's online, who's intentionally trying to hate The Last of Us, but I feel like they're really resting on their laurels. I feel like nobody's really challenging them anymore. In season one, they were challenged to make something popular, and there was such this stigma against video game adaptations, and they really fought against that. And then the show was a hit, and they were just like, well, screw it. We do what we do. So I don't know, man. Which kind of makes the whole ending of the ending of this gets even worse. So even though they show up maybe a minute, she's been dead for maybe a minute. I mean, they've barely been there. First of all, Ellie could have pulled that baby out. She just chooses not to. And even if you don't do it in the most appropriate way possible, aren't you dead at that point? I mean, who cares what you do? Desecrate that body and get that baby out. She's like, do I cut? Which way do I cut? I don't know, man. Who cares? Like, just at that point, I mean, most of the times the cesarean sections are also done for a certain way for the survivability of the mother. That ain't happening. So get that baby out. And it doesn't do it. So Ellie just is, so she has more things to be sad about, you know. Got to make Ellie more sad. And the list of things that Ellie, you know, this revenge plot, this revenge tour. Ellie also admitted earlier on to Dina everything, like she knew about Joel and what Joel did and that kind of stuff. So she's all like, she's admitted to everything in this mission of vengeance. So Tommy and Jesse take her back, and they're like, well, you can't get, they don't know where Abby is, and the two people who did are dead, so they're gonna head back, and Ellie's just gonna have to learn to live without finding Abby, which isn't gonna be a problem. So we go back to the theater, which Dina has magically held up on her own. Surprisingly, I was a little worried that somebody would find her, but nobody checks this theater. People just keep walking in and out of it. The wolves are also terrible at their job. But then again, this is Seattle, which is a metropolis. This is the one thing that I feel like we can't speak on enough, is Walking Dead Dead City is doing the same thing right now with people just wandering around New York and finding each other really easily. These are huge cities. These aren't little towns. If you think about, like, if you live in a little town or even a medium-sized town, and you're like, if I had to walk around the town right now and try to find somebody in a specific building, how long would that take me? And when you realize that they've been here for 3 days, it gets a little, there are a lot of streets that you'd have to go up and down, you know. It would take a lot longer than we're really giving it any credit for. And the fact that Jesse and Tommy are, I don't know, like the greatest trailblazers to ever live this planet is also a little frustrating. Jesse does explain how he found them, but it doesn't, it felt like a bullshit explanation. So they're back at the theater, and Jesse and Ellie are in the main theater area, and they hear somebody come in, and they hear like a shot or something, and they go out, and there's like yelling, and what it is Abby has found them, and immediately Abby fires at Jesse in the head. Instant death. Jesse, who found out he was going to be a dad and was talking about this community and everything and feeling like, you know, and one of the things he says to Ellie is, the reason why I came for you is because I feel like you'd burn down the world if it was me. You know, all that, dead, gone. They kept his death from the video game. So apparently we just have to do that. We have to make sure everything is exactly the same, because otherwise the video game people would be the video game people are already upset because, and I spoke to this in another recap, you have the video game people who liked the choices that you made, and then you also have the other half of the people who played the video game and didn't like it. So you have another faction, which is the people who didn't play the video game and who don't give a shit and are watching the show and aren't liking or are liking the choices that you make and don't necessarily care about where they come from. So when you play constantly to choices that were divisive within the video game and you're choosing the half of the, well, we did it in the video game, so we have to do it here for the people who liked the video game, that isn't 100% of the people who played the video game. And it's also not going to be it's also not going to be the same percentage for every choice. So Jesse's dead, and Abby shouts at Ellie a lot, and we get another shot, presumably at Ellie. Although I don't think this series ends with an Abby giving Ellie one fatal shot. It's just not that. I don't know. But we hear another shot, and then we just cut, and then we cut to day one, and it's Abby where she is. So she's in a stadium, and there's like farming and some animals down below. They've repurposed the football field for farming purposes. And she's being summoned to Jeffrey Wright's character. And that's where we're going to pick up next season, is Abby's journey. We already don't like her. Now you want like a whole season around Abby? Oh my Jesus. Please don't do that. I'm so afraid now that the next season is going to be Abby, the season. We're going to get you caught up on where Abby was. And it's like, I already hate her. Like, I think Caitlin Dever has done a nice job, but I don't know that it's been Emmy-worthy. And there's nothing here that would make me want to vote for her. She's not a complex villain. You have not created or crafted a complex villain with like different levels and layers. We spend very little time with her. She's angry. She doesn't seem to have any sort of rationalization. Ellie arguably is a lot like her, but we spend more time with Ellie, so we're able to understand where Ellie is coming from. So that makes more sense. We haven't done that with Abby. The storytelling is not equal. Abby is not Ellie, and following Abby will kill your show. So you already have people who are going to have to wait a gap of time. And in that time, they're going to be thinking to themselves, do I want to watch Abby? Yes or no? And I think that audience is going to be lower, especially now that we know we don't have Joel. You killed Jesse. Tommy could be dead. We don't know. Dina, I mean, like, who knows at this point? There aren't that many series regulars or recurring characters at this point. So it just doesn't support that. Most everybody is competing as guest actor at the Emmys because they haven't been in enough episodes to compete in supporting. So for a series that only has 7 episodes, isn't that sad? So that's my rant. I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why we're trying to do it. I don't know what the reasoning is for making all of the same choices. I think The Walking Dead benefited a lot from, especially early on, from keeping it fresh. Remember that the biggest thing that turned people off was Negan killing Glenn, which actually happened in the comic books. But by that point, The Walking Dead had surpassed the amount of people who read the comic books. So it had a huge fan base who had become attached to Glenn and did not care that that was Glenn's death in the comic books. That was exactly what was supposed to happen when it was supposed to happen. So the series had survived up until that point, creating characters like Daryl, who weren't even in the comic books, to completely swapping out deaths. Andrea dies in the TV series way before I don't even think she's dead in the comic books. If I remember correctly, I think Andrea's still alive. Carol dies really early in the comic books, but then is now in a fucking spinoff because she's still alive. There's so many instances where the show made a different choice, and it was all way before Negan, and when the ratings were still climbing, and they were still making choices that were different from what was in the source material. They were keeping it fresh. The audiences were there. They showed up, and it was good storytelling. There, for some reason, with The Last of Us, there's this determination which comes from when the original person who wrote the source material is having to also adapt his own series. And this is why we don't let Stephen King do things, because we've all seen Maximum Overdrive. And so if Stephen King was the one who had to shepherd all of his adaptations to the big screen, they would all look like Maximum Overdrive. So we've seen what it's like when Stephen King makes a movie and what his idea of that is. He's an author. That is what he does. So if you wrote for a video game, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should be the same person making the creative choices for the TV series. I think you absolutely can advise, much like J.K. Rowling does, I'm sure, for the Harry Potter franchise. But ultimately, those films are written and directed by different people. Those movies are successful, and they make different choices. So I don't know why this series is so gung-ho on keeping the most divisive and worst choices that the people from the video games seem to hate and thrusting them upon us. So it's like telling somebody the house is on fire. You know that they can see the house is on fire, and they go in anyway, and you're pretty sure there's no one in there to rescue. And you don't know why they're going in there. But they went in, and it was their own choice. So what can you do? Yeah, I thought this was a mess of a finale for various reasons. Also, it was probably more so than any of the other episodes played like a video game. Like I was hitting checkpoint to checkpoint to checkpoint, and I was being forced to make choices that I would not have made as an actual character. And you get that a lot in video games where it's very narrow storytelling because they need you to go from point A to point B, not for any other reason other than you need that to advance the story. And if you wander away, if it's an open world setting like GTA Online, then there is no story and you're just wandering around blowing shit up. So for purposes of you following the story, but also then when you readapt it for cinematic purposes, it doesn't have to feel like that. You have the ability to change things and to make different choices, and you don't have to constantly pay homage to the thing you did before. So there were some great episodes this season. The last episode was fantastic. I really liked the flashback episode. I think it did a lot for those characters, for those actors. This episode felt like we were stuck in a video game, moving from point A to point B, and there was nothing we could do, and I couldn't get out of it. I was in like a giant cutscene, and I kept trying to get out of it, but I couldn't. And the only other choices, anytime I was allowed to quote make a choice, I was only ever allowed one option. I was never allowed another option. So it felt like I was on this direct thing forward in the least pleasant way possible from a former gamer. I haven't really played video games since losing my vision, but man, did I play before. So I'm going to give The Last of Us season finale a B-. It's like, I think it's, since they killed Joel, I think it's the lowest episode I've given it. I didn't like this finale. And not just because they killed Jesse, but for like a series of reasons. Just, some of them being like, where did Jesse and Tommy come from? What is the point of showing Ellie going on this epic journey to get into the aquarium? And then Jesse and Tommy are just like 5 minutes later, just like, what's up? Like Jesse was able to run all the way over there, rescue Tommy from the rooftop of a building where he was sniping, and then come back and have almost caught up to Ellie. And know exactly where Ellie was, too. He's very good at finding exactly, like, GPS. It's amazing that he didn't hear Abby coming. And also, Abby, I feel like there's a reason why Abby knows where they are, and there's going to be an answer to that, and I'm hoping it's a good one. Because if it's like Jesse's answer for like how he knew where they were in that pharmacy or whatever, I'm gonna be really disappointed. If it's like Abby is like, well, I went here, naturally I checked here and I saw that and I went over there and you were here. Great. So, um, I also want to know how Abby knows that she killed her friends. You know what I'm saying? I want to know things, but I'm sure we'll come up with a stupid reason next season. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.